They told us he was guilty, they said. The trial had been fair, they said it was necessary. I was there when they dragged him out, bloody, broken still. Trying to stand tall, I remember the silence in the hall, the way no one looked him in the eye, not the guards, not the diplomats, not even the Terran representatives who stood there like cowards trying not to shake. His name was Commander Redden, but he was more than that to me, more than that to any of us who still remembered Earth before we were domesticated like pets in the Galactic Federation, before the Council handed out our rights like ration packs before we bent the knee. He was the last human who dared to fight back. They framed him for the bombing of Kazari Station, a disaster that killed over 600 non-human diplomats. Everyone knew it wasn't him. The evidence was shaky. Surveillance footage was glitchy. The only witness was a known mind leecher banned in 5 sectors for memory manipulation, but none of it mattered. The moment they blamed a human, they had their excuse. So the Council held their mock trial, streamed it to every system, and they sentenced him to death, not quietly, not by exile or stasis, public execution, beheading on the steps of the Unity Plaza, broadcast to all sectors. Warning, we're not equals, we never were. I watched from the edge of the square, surrounded by aliens who cheered. Some of them spit on him as they dragged him past. He didn't flinch, didn't speak, just stared ahead, jaw tight, one eye swollen shut. I remember thinking, how is he still walking? When they laid him down and brought the blade, I wanted to scream, but I didn't. None of us did. That was the thing. We had been trained to stay quiet, keep our heads down, be grateful. We were even allowed in their cities, on their ships, in their precious Federation. But that moment when the blade dropped and his head hit the steel, it did something to me, to all of us. You could feel it, like the galaxy shifted just a bit, like something ancient inside us had just opened its eyes again. They thought they ended something that day, but they started a war. I didn't go home after. I walked the alleys behind the plaza, fists clenched, heart pounding, vision blurry with rage. I found others, humans I hadn't spoken to in years. A technician, a medic, a pilot, all of them quiet, angry, numb like me. We didn't talk about revenge, not yet. That came later. But we remembered that night the stars felt different, colder, like they were watching us, or maybe waiting. We weren't ready yet, but we would be. One of the medics passed me a data drive. No words, just a look. I slipped it into my jacket and left. Later, alone in my quarters, I opened it. Footage, messages, hidden files, Redden's final recordings, the truth. He knew they were coming for him. He'd left a plan. I stared at the screen long after the message ended. His voice was rough, like gravel dragged across steel, tired but focused. There wasn't fear in his tone, just this cold, controlled anger. He wasn't scared of dying. He'd already accepted it. That's what made it worse. The Council didn't execute a criminal. They executed a man who knew he'd die and used it to light a fuse. I replayed the first line over and over. If you're hearing this, it means I'm gone. Good. That means it's finally time. I didn't sleep that night. I sat there in that tiny government-subsidized room. Concrete walls, no window, security. Drone humming faintly outside, and listened to him like he was right in front of me. He talked about the sabotage on Kazari Station, how the explosion wasn't caused by a human at all but by a council op, a false flag. A staged disaster to unify the aliens against the last independent human. Colonies still resisting absorption. The file had details, names, coordinates. Communications logs, too much. Information to be faked, too precise. They're not scared of us because we're violent, he said. They're scared because we don't need them, because we adapt, because we don't bow. His words crawled under my skin, not like inspiration, not some noble speech with flags and parades. No, it was guilt, shame, the kind of thing that made you look in the mirror and ask what the hell you've been doing while your species got crushed into a footnote. I remembered the look on his face as the blade dropped, not fear, not even pain. Defiance, and I just watched. I didn't realize I was shaking until I looked down and saw the glass in my hand. Cracked, blood running between my knuckles. I let it drop. Everything changed after that night. 2 days later, I got the message. Encrypted, bounced through 6 black market relays, simple text. He left more than a speech. Come to Doc 9, bring no one. I should have deleted it, should have ignored it and reported it like a good citizen, but I didn't. You don't watch a man die for your future and go back to filing import forms or fixing faulty hydro sinks. Doc 9 was in the underbelly of Virex Prime's orbital ring, a maintenance sector long since gutted by budget cuts and infested with smugglers, the kind of place the Council's clean-suited enforcers never visited unless they were dumping bodies or buying silence. I wore civilian gear. No ID tags, slipped past the outer gates, using an old bypass code I memorized back when I used to run fuel convoys. During the war, that was before the Federation liberated Earth and made us all part of their pretty peaceful utopia. Dock 9 was empty when I got there, rusted bulkheads, broken lights, the smell of old oil and ozone in the air. I waited 5 minutes, 10. Then a voice behind me, you were closer to him than most. I turned, hand instinctively reaching under my coat. But the figure in front of me wasn't armed, a woman, tall, hard lines on her face, human military posture, even civilian clothes. I flew with him during the Ganymede siege, she said. He saved my entire transport squad when the Alari bombers broke through the shield grid, left his own command post to do it, and they called him a terrorist. I didn't say anything. She held out a small device, data cube, untraceable. This is the rest of what he left behind. Names, locations, safe houses, rebellion cells. I took it. Why me? I asked. She looked at me dead serious. Because he trusted you, and because I'm tired of watching cowards wear our uniforms and call it peace. Then she was gone. The cube had more than I expected. Not just intelligence, it was a network. Old resistance cells from the Confederation days, smugglers, soldiers, scientists, anyone who still remembered what it meant to be human before we were assimilated. I plugged it into my private terminal, shielded off-grid, and watched the map unfold. Red dots, dozens of them, some blinking, some steady, every one of them a potential ally, a spark. Rain had built something under their noses. He knew he wouldn't survive, but he also knew something deeper. We wouldn't forget. That execution, that public theater was meant to erase him, a warning and ending. Instead, it became a beginning. I started with Mars Colony Theta. They were quiet, mostly miners and freight runners, but they remembered the old Days still kept the old flags when I reached out carefully using the ciphers. Rain had left, they responded in less than a day. Their reply wasn't words, it was footage, council enforcers breaking into homes, dragging humans into transport pods. No charges, no trials, just disappearances. Theta had been under silent martial law for months, but the media said everything was fine. I sent the footage to 5 other cells, and just like that, the silence broke. More messages came from Jovian moons, from forgotten outposts near the edge of council space, from old soldiers who'd been waiting for someone to say it out loud that we were done bowing. Then came the spark. A freighter exploded over Arrow Station. Council blamed human rebels within hours, said it was another terrorist attack, but I knew the pilot. His name was Kellen, quiet guy, never even raised his voice. He was moving medical supplies, had a clean record. They didn't even let his wife see the body. I reached out to her. She didn't cry. She just said, "Tell me what you need." That's when I realized this wasn't going to be a rebellion. It was going to be a reckoning. I started pulling together a core team, real people, no politicians, no exiles looking to play war hero, just the ones who had lost something. Comms engineer from the lunar cradle, who'd watched her brother get taken for re-education. A combat drone tech from Titan who smuggled explosives in maintenance crates. An old medic from Ceres who used to patch up rebels during the first occupation, now retired, bitter and very good at making people disappear. We called ourselves the Embers because that's what we were, the last heat before the fire comes back. Our first stop was small, a test, a council supply relay outpost. Nothing big, just a hub they used to move rations and fuel through the mid-sector routes. But it was poorly guarded, human workers, alien overseers, sloppy security. We didn't go in guns blazing. We hijacked their comms, rewrote their manifests, diverted the entire convoy to one of our safe zones. No casualties, no alerts, but we left a message on their terminal. We remember. They didn't understand it yet, but they would. The council responded fast, too fast. They launched sweeps, raided human districts in the inner colonies, made arrests, disappearances, curfews. That's when the protests started, peaceful at first, then less so, humans pushing back, refusing orders, striking, sabotaging, rioting. Some cells wanted to go full war mode immediately, but I told them no, not yet. We needed them to overreact, and they did. On the 3rd week after the Arrows explosion, the council authorized open lethal force on unregistered human gatherings. They called it a security measure. We called it permission. It's strange how fast things crumble. They think order is permanent, that empires last because they're powerful. But it's not power that holds things together, it's fear and routine and silence break those, and even the greatest civilization turns to ash. And Rain knew that. That's why he died quiet. He didn't want to become a martyr with a flag and a slogan. He wanted to become a virus, one that infected every system they built, every lie they told. And now it was working. They tried to use propaganda, said we were extremists, said Rain was a criminal, that the footage was faked, that we wanted chaos. But people weren't buying it anymore. They saw the blade fall, and now they were seeing the fire spread. I sat in my quarters again, staring at the message one more time. Reden's voice. They want us to beg for dignity to prove we're civilized enough to be free. Screw that, we already paid the price. Now they can pay too. I leaned back, exhaled slow. Outside the station window, a council warship was docking, reinforcements. They were scared, moving troops into the colonies, watching everything, but it was too late. We weren't afraid anymore. Next up, we strike a weapons facility on Dravik 4, deep space, heavily guarded. Risky, but it'll send a message. The council burned one man to scare us. Now we'll burn their systems down one by one. Because the day they executed a human was the day the galaxy began to burn. They said Dravik 4 was impenetrable, buried beneath miles of black rock and magnetic dust storms. The council's weapons facility was built to be invisible, untouchable. Only 3 access routes each, controlled by AI-operated drones and rotating squads. No civilian entries, no trade routes, and absolutely no human staff. It was a fortress, and it wasn't supposed to be on any map, but Radin had left its location in the archive, not just coordinates, blueprints, internal logs, a detailed log of who visited, what was stored, and when it was vulnerable. He must have had someone on the inside at some point, maybe years ago, before he became the name on every wanted poster from Mars to the Anderley Nebula. We didn't want to destroy the facility. We wanted to rob it. The first step was diversion. We sent out fake signals, distress beacons disguised as pirate attacks near the Tarson Belt, then leaked them anonymously through black market comms networks the council always monitored. It was crude, but it worked. Their patrols shifted, their scout fleet pulled away to check out the ghost pings that left Dravik 4 open, or as open as it would ever be. There were only 6 of us on the infiltration crew. Small team, lean, every one of us hand-picked. I was Point Sila's quiet guy, ex-rail gunner with half his face replaced by a breathing rig. He could shoot a wasp drone from 3 clicks out. Riina. Demolitions, bitter as hell, lost 2 sisters during the lunar cleanse back when Earth tried to resist assimilation. V, not fully human anymore, grew up in a hybrid ghetto and had bone augments. Banned by the council, good with stealth, didn't ask questions. And then there was Dent, the wild card. Didn't trust him fully. He talked too smooth, and his background had gaps, but he was good at slicing through AI firewalls. And right now, that meant we needed him. We dropped onto Dravik 4 at 300 station time. The dust storm hit our entry just like the weather model said it would. Our ship, barely more than a glorified cargo hauler with stolen military mods, landed hard, skidding over the rocky plain before sinking into a natural crater. Then we walked. I still remember the crunch of the dust beneath my boots like glass. It got in your eyes, your mouth, your ears. The whole place felt cursed. No birds, no sound, just wind, cold and sharp like a blade. The entrance was a vertical shaft sealed by biometric gates and a subdermal scan. Dent cracked the first one in 5 minutes. He didn't even sweat. You know, for a top-secret facility, they sure didn't update their security firmware. He muttered, typing. I didn't respond. I didn't like him. There was something off about his voice, the way he never sounded afraid, even when he should be. Once inside, we moved quiet. No lights, no chatter, just signals passed through hand gestures and blinks. We had 12 minutes before the rotation. Patrols circled back. That's all the time We'd bought ourselves with the decoy. Distress signals, we hit the main vault. First, inside were pulse rifles, fusion charges, neural disruptors. The kind of weapons they swore didn't exist anymore, banned by Federation treaties, the kind of weapons designed to erase cities, not conquer them. We didn't have time to take everything. We grabbed what we could carry, locked the rest in a timed thermal rig that would melt the casings after we left. If we couldn't use them, no one would. Riina placed the charges at every structural point she could find. No countdowns, just dead man triggers. We'd blow the place after exfil if things went south. That's when it happened. We were on our way back, cutting through a lower corridor when we saw them. Humans, they were workers. Dozens of them, starved looking, collars on their necks, living in a subble no one had mentioned in the data. The council was using them for labor, illegal in every system, even by their own rules. Riina froze. Her hand went to her detonator. We weren't told about this, she whispered. They're not supposed to be here, I muttered back. They're slaves. We were out of time. Our window was closing, but we couldn't leave them. Not after everything we'd been fighting for. I made the call. We unlocked the doors. The first few didn't even move, just stared at us like we were part of a dream. Then one of them, a boy no older than 16, dropped to his knees and started sobbing. I helped him up. You're free, I told him, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. The council knew we were there before we reached the surface. Security drones spotted movement near the shaft and flagged it. The AI responded faster than we expected. By the time we reached the top, we saw them, troopers. Not the soft, diplomatic kind, real ones, black armor, silent. We had maybe 30 seconds before they opened fire. Fall back, I shouted. The workers, disoriented and slow, couldn't move fast enough. Silas set up cover fire, laying down suppressing blasts that bought us time. Riina passed out, smoke charges. The chaos hit hard. I dragged two of the kids behind a wrecked loader and tossed a rifle to one of the older workers. He hesitated. You ever shoot one of these? He nodded. Then aim low and don't stop. We lost 3 workers before we even reached the ridge. V took a hit to the shoulder, bleeding bad but still moving. Dent, he was gone, disappeared during the shootout. No comms, no backup. I should have known then. When we finally reached the ship, we were down to half of us. Silas stayed behind, covering our retreat. His last words over comms were, "Make it matter." Then the line went dead. We barely lifted off before council interceptors arrived. I detonated the charges. The entire western vault of Dravek 4 collapsed into itself. Fire poured from the shaft. Smoke curled into the storm above like a funeral flag. We hadn't just stolen weapons, we'd shown the galaxy their lies, their slavery, their hypocrisy, their fear of us. Back at base, things unraveled fast. The footage we captured of the slaves, the secret weapons, went viral within hours. After we leaked it, even non-human species started asking questions. News feeds that had ignored us were suddenly forced to cover the story. Protesters began gathering across neutral systems. But then came the real betrayal. Dent. He'd survived, of course not a scratch on him. Turns out he'd been recording everything, not just the op, not just the vault, us. He sold the footage to the council's intelligence arm, edited spliced, turned into propaganda, made us look like terrorists who'd murdered innocent workers, destroyed a peaceful lab, and staged the whole thing. The council broadcasted galaxy-wide. And just like that, we were back to being monsters. But here's the thing they never understood. Every time they tried to bury us, it just proved our point. Every lie they told added to the fire. Every betrayal made us sharper. Dent disappeared after the leak. No trace. But I made a list. I'm not forgetting his name, not after what he did to Silas, not after what he cost us. The embers fractured for a while. Some cells went dark, others went rogue. One group bombed a civilian transport. Claimed it was a council decoy. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but we lost public sympathy overnight. Still, there were those who held the line. Riina stayed, so did V despite his injury, and others started coming in. Soldiers, scientists, pilots, even aliens. Yeah, that surprised me too. Zarn technician named Fall reached out. Said he saw the real footage before the council edited it. Said his people didn't support slavery. Said he wanted to help. I didn't trust him, but we were running out of allies, so I said yes. The war wasn't a war yet, not officially, but across the galaxy. Humans were rising, strikes, sabotage, assassinations, hackers flooding council servers with data leaks, systems going offline, supply chains breaking down. They called us the fire below, said we were ungrateful, dangerous, primitive, but we knew the truth. We were never part of their utopia. We were just tolerated until we stopped being useful. Now they're learning what happens when humans stop pretending to be tame. And me, I kept listening to Rain's message over and over, because he wasn't just giving us orders, he was reminding us who we were. They want us to forget Earth, forget war, forget defiance, but we were made in fire. We were raised in resistance. They can't understand us, and they never will. The hardest part of rebellion isn't the risk, it's the waiting, the stretch of silence between strikes, where every second feels like you're breathing in a storm that hasn't broken yet. After the Dravik 4 fallout and Dent's betrayal, we were ghosts in our own movement, hunted, misunderstood, branded terrorists in every major system. But fire has a way of spreading through cracks in the council's perfect facade had more than enough. That crack widened when the footage of the human slave labor on Dravik 4 refused to disappear. Despite their edits and spin, the truth got out. Someone we never found out who leaked the original uncut file, the whole damn thing, every scream, every collar, every dead-eyed worker staring at the camera. And when it did, the galaxy started to shift, not with cheers, not with sudden support, but with questions, dangerous ones. Why was it supposedly outlawed? Weapons vault still active. Why were humans equal members of the Federation working like cattle underground? Why did the council lie? And for the first time, non-human species began to whisper the words we'd been screaming for years. Maybe the humans were right. I remember the meeting clearly. It was held inside a fractured asteroid deep in the Paian dust fields, a place so unstable even council ships refused to track it. We called it Dead Hollow. The locals called it Cursed. Perfect for us. Representatives from 16 human cells gathered, including us, the embers, or what was left of us. Riina sat next to me, one arm wrapped in a crude brace. From her last fight, V leaned against the wall behind us, half shrouded in Shadow watching everyone like a predator. The rest of the cells didn't talk much. They were all just waiting for someone to take control. Then a voice rang out from the far corridor, deep, slow, cold. I should have killed Dent myself. We all turned. A man walked in, broad, heavy-set, face lined with old scars. One eye missing, the other burned red, from years of exposure to unshielded solar flares. A name flashed in my head. Something Redden had whispered once in a drunken haze years ago. If he ever comes back, the council's days are numbered. His name was Kurath, and he'd been dead for 5 years or so, we thought. KTH wasn't a leader, he was a destroyer. Before the council normalized Earth, he led the First Fang, a brutal, off-the-books task force made of exiles, war criminals and burned agents, all human. They didn't negotiate, they didn't take prisoners, they forced the Federation to recognize human sovereignty through fear. Then one day, Kurath vanished. Rumor was the council finally caught him, tortured him, executed him like Redden, but no, he'd just been waiting, and now he wanted blood. The meeting descended into chaos. Half the room respected him, the other half feared him. What we need is legitimacy, argued Juno, a comms commander from the Proxima Reclaimers. We've got non-human sympathizers watching now. We show we're willing to work with them, they'll betray us the second we blink. Kurath interrupted. Just like Dent, you want to be friends with the ones who sold us out. Fine, die holding their hands. Not all of them are council lapdogs, I added, trying to be the damn voice of reason. KTH turned to me, that single burning. I drilled into mine. Who are you? Doesn't matter, I said. I've bled enough to earn a seat. He didn't argue, just grunted and sat, but I knew from that moment Kith was going to be a problem. We weren't fighting for the same future. He wanted revenge, I wanted freedom. Meanwhile, the galaxy kept boiling. Small rebellions erupted across non-human colonies. The Alari, once the council's most loyal species, had their lower caste revolt after leaked reports showed forced sterilizations in human zones, a practice supposedly outlawed a century ago. The Ventri, normally passive traders, began refusing to carry council supplies. Quiet protest, but loud in its own way, even inside the council itself. 2 high-ranking alien senators resigned in protest, claiming they were misled about humanity's treatment, but none of it slowed the crackdown. If anything, it made the council worse. More surveillance, martial law on 3 human planets, orbital checkpoints above former Terran strongholds, and in some colonies they started separating human children from families, citing cultural re-education protocols. They weren't even hiding it anymore. They were scared because we were winning the truth war. We struck again. This time it wasn't a raid, it was a message, a high-level data silo in the Sarin sector used for storing surveillance records and blackmail files the council used to control dissident. We didn't blow it up. We hijacked it and we leaked every goddamn file. Who they'd silenced, how they'd manipulated economies, which systems were being forced to starve out their human populations under Quatoda laws. It was chaos, and in that chaos, something surprising happened. The Andori sovereignty, one of the oldest alien empires in the Federation, withdrew from the council, cited moral incompatibility. That shook the galaxy harder than any bomb we'd ever planted, but victory came at a cost. Rihanna didn't make it back. From the Soren op, we'd been split. During extraction, I thought she was behind me, but the council's ought. Turrets reactivated too fast. She covered our retreat. I saw her silhouette in the rear viewport as our ship climbed atmosphere. She was standing still facing them. She never blinked. She placed her detonator on her own chest, and she took the entire comms tower with her. Vec hasn't spoken since. I buried her name in the Hall of Cinders, our encrypted memorial buried in the dark net, accessible only to human resistance fighters. And when I closed the file, I opened Redden's message one more time. You'll lose people, you'll doubt the cause, you want to burn the whole damn thing down just to feel something. But remember, they already took everything. Now they don't get to keep peace. Meanwhile, Kurth was gathering strength. Too much strength. His followers, the Black Ember Legion, began bombing not just council targets but neutral ones. 2. Civilian convoys, alien hospitals, research colonies that hadn't picked a side. To him, neutrality was betrayal. And betrayal deserved fire. I confronted him in a bunker on KR7, just the two of us. You're making us look like monsters, I said. His answer, we are. Then he leaned in. You still think this is about politics, about winning over their hearts? I don't want their hearts. I want their screams. I stepped back. You sound just like them. He smiled. They made me this way. That's when I knew he had to be stopped. But before I could plan anything, something else hit. A signal came through our emergency beacon line, the one only one person had access to. The encryption signature matched Redden. Impossible, he was dead. I'd watched it, the execution, the broadcast, the blood, but the signature was real, and the message, 4 words. I wasn't the only one. That night I stared at those words until my eyes blurred. If it was real, if someone else had survived, someone high enough to access Rain's private channels, that changed everything. I ran the trace, even though I knew it was dangerous. The signal came from Yathar, a derelict station in the outer Veil, long abandoned after a radiation breach. No ships had docked there in 20 years, so of course I made plans to go. V insisted on coming, still hadn't spoken, but his eyes said enough. I loaded 2 rifles, left the rest of the cell in command of a man named H. Loyal, sharp but slow to act. I didn't trust him to lead forever, just long enough. We landed on Ithar 6 hours later. No signs of life, but the signal was still active. Inside, the station was rotting. Metal groaning, lights flickering. The radiation was lower than expected. Someone had rigged shielding, and in the heart of it, surrounded by holographic projections and broken council tech, we found her. Not Redden, but his sister. She looked just like him, same fire in her eye, same burn scars across her palms, old ones from before the war. Her name she didn't say, but her first words were, the execution was staged. Rain's alive. She looked like a ghost from the fire. We'd all crawled through. The woman standing before us in that radiation scarred chamber had the same steel in her jaw, the same quiet rage simmering behind her eyes as Redden did. Resemblance was unmistakable. But I didn't let it blind me. People lie, people manipulate, especially when the whole galaxy is at war. V stood beside me, silent as always, his augmented eye glowing faintly in the dim red emergency lighting. He hadn't spoken in weeks, not since Rihanna's death, but I saw the way his body tensed, the way his breathing shifted. He was ready to kill her if I gave the word. But I didn't, because the first thing she said turned everything upside down. The execution was staged. Red's alive. I stared at her for a long time. No, I finally said. I watched it. We all did. It was live. It was doctored, she replied. Recorded. Days before, the man they beheaded. Wasn't him. I shook my head, jaw tightening. He looked at me right before they dropped the blade. I saw him. He saw me. You saw what they wanted you to see, she said. You think the council can't fake an execution? I didn't answer. She stepped forward, slowly holding out a small device. Memory node. I hesitated, then took it. V watched her every movement like a hawk. Play it. If it doesn't convince you, kill me, but if it does, you need to listen carefully, because the real war hasn't even started yet. Back aboard our ship, I loaded the node into our secure deck. It wasn't just a message. It was a full archive. Footage, logs, biometric data, intercepted council comms, all cross-verified. Redden's execution had been orchestrated by the council's internal security faction, the Ascendancy Unit, the same ones behind the DVAC slave operation. They'd faked the beheading using a doped-up human dissident who'd been surgically altered to match Redden's features. It wasn't perfect, but with crowd control, selective broadcasting, and visual filters, it had worked. Rain had been alive 2 weeks after the execution, hidden inside a black site station on the fringe of the Wastes, and then silence. That was over 8 months ago. The last entry was a recording. Rain himself, bloodied, wounded, strapped to a chair, but alive. If this gets out, then I'm either dead or I escaped. Either way, the council's mask is off. I didn't want to be a symbol. I wanted to be a warning. But now I think we have to be both. He coughed, then looked directly into the camera. They aren't just afraid of humans, they're afraid of what they did to us. I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, watching the message again and again, thinking about everything that had happened since that broadcast. The uprisings, the deaths, the alliances. Riina Dent Kureth, all of it was built on the blood of a lie, but it didn't make the cause any less real. In fact, it made it worse. We weren't fighting the council because Redden had been murdered. We were fighting because we were right, because the council had been wrong for decades, because their idea of peace meant erasing us. Back on Ithar, the woman, she still hadn't given her name, waited quietly as I processed everything. V stood watch while I asked her the question burning at the center of my skull. Why fake it? Why not just kill him outright? She answered without hesitation. Because they needed to kill Hope publicly. If they killed him in secret, he'd become a myth. If they made a spectacle, they could control the message. They underestimated us, I muttered. They always have. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. We think he escaped. There were traces of a breach, tampered logs, energy surges. The black site went dark a week later. We haven't heard anything since, but I don't believe he died there. I looked at her, and if he did, then he gave us everything we needed to win. We returned to base 2 days later. Embers were buzzing with tension, rumors of another attack. Kureth's Black Legion had bombed a Trinari refugee center, claiming it was a council front. It wasn't dozens dead, mostly alien Children, the backlash was immediate. Alien support that had started to build. After the Dravek leak evaporated. Overnight. And Kurath, he didn't care, he released. A statement masked distorted voice. There are no innocents left, they let it happen, they fed the beast, now they burn with it. I knew what had to happen. Next, the council was splintering, that much was clear, intercepted. Transmissions showed panic among their upper ranks. Some member species were calling for investigations. A few called for Reden's execution footage to be reviewed, demands for biometric audits. The council refused, which made it worse. Their silence screamed guilt. And in that silence our message started spreading again. We leaked the Reden archive, every file, every log, every contradiction, and timed it with independent verification from former Federation scientists, the kind of neutral voices the public trusted. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know what else the council had lied about. Suddenly, we weren't the monsters anymore. We were the mirror, but it wasn't enough, not while Kurath was still out there painting our rebellion in blood. So I made the call. V and I tracked him down on a dying moon called Brask, a hollow place torn up by mining and left to rot, perfect for a man like him. We found his camp, dozens of humans armed to the teeth, desperate, angry, fanatical. I walked in alone. They let me pass. He was sitting in a broken throne made from council helmets, laughing at some report on a flickering hollow screen. He looked older, more scarred, more broken. You've lost the thread, I said. He looked up, eyes burning. No, I became the thread. You're the one still begging for approval. You murdered children. They weren't children to me. I wanted to shoot him right there, but I needed him to understand. Redton's alive, I said. He froze. I have the data. We leaked it. The whole galaxy is watching now. Even the council's allies are turning on them. But we can't win if we're seen as no better than them. His jaw clenched. You think they care? You think aliens give a damn about truth, about redemption? They'll watch us burn if it means they get to sleep peacefully. We don't need their permission. No, I said quietly, we need each other. He stood, stared me down, then said something I didn't expect. I know where Reden is. He didn't give me coordinates, just a name. Vern Station. I knew the place, a former medical hub that went dark 5 years ago, supposedly a research facility, but rumors swirled that it became a black site. It was in the dead ring, a region of space twisted by gravitational anomalies, no safe routes, no nav beacons, no witnesses. Kurath didn't say anything else, just handed me a data chip and said, use it. Or don't, either way the fire won't stop. Now I sit here staring at a star map. Vex silent beside me, the chip waiting in my hand like a loaded gun. The rebellion is at its breaking point. Half the galaxy is starting to believe us, but the other half is watching Kurth burn cities and wondering if maybe the council was right to fear us, and somewhere out there, maybe alive, maybe not, is the man who started it all. Reden, the galaxy thinks he's dead, but if we find him, if he speaks again, the council won't just fracture, it'll collapse. The dead ring wasn't just a name, it was a sentence, a chain of dead stars circling a black hole that had been swallowing light for centuries. No official routes, no trade lanes, no rescue signals. You didn't go into the dead ring unless you had a death wish or something worse. And Vern Station sat right in the middle of it like a coffin. That refused to rot. We left 2 days. After the meeting with Kurth, just me. And V. No backup, no comms, no promises. We'd come back. I left a single message. With Horn encrypted and sealed, if we don't return in 7 days, blow the embers. Don't wait, burn everything. Because if the council had turned Vern into what I feared, then we were already ghosts. We entered the dead ring on a stolen Solarian scout craft, fast, quiet, undetectable. The AI tried to course correct as we neared the event horizon of the systems. Collapsed star, I had to disable it. Manually override every safety protocol. The space around us wasn't black, it was something else, like light. Didn't just vanish, it bent, colors. Warped stars stretched like smears on wet glass. I saw things in the void I don't have words for. V didn't speak. Just kept his eyes on the sensor. Readouts twitching every time a false echo appeared. Vern Station came into view after 16 hours. It looked abandoned, a broken spine of metal drifting slowly near the edge of gravitational distortion. No lights, no signals, no power signature. But the moment we got close, the ship's sensors flared red, life signs, not many, just a few, but one of them matched Redden's biometric template. We docked manually. There was no automated guidance, no welcome protocols. The airlock was open, but damaged like it had been forced once, then sealed again by someone in a hurry. We went in armed. The first thing that hit me was the smell, old blood, rotting wires. Something sharp and sterile, like burnt metal soaked in ammonia. The halls were dark, flashing only flickers as we passed motion sensors, barely clinging to function. Medical bays stripped clean, surgical equipment left scattered like someone had left mid-operation. Every wall was marked with numbers, not signs, not names, just numbers, like the people here had forgotten language. We found the first body in the mess hall, or what was left of it. Human face, half melted, collar fused to the spine. No signs of struggle, no external wounds, just dead. V leaned in close, scanned it with a handheld reader. Neural, he finally said. His voice was rough. It was the first time he'd spoken in weeks. Induced. He nodded. Council neuroweapons prototypes not stable, makes the brain burn from the inside out. That matched the rumors about Vern, place where the council tested technology too illegal to exist, too cruel to be admitted. And now we were walking through its aftermath. We pushed deeper. Signs of struggle started appearing, blood on the walls, shattered restraints, messages scratched into steel. I remember Earth. We woke up. They can't unmake us. We found a control room, half the systems fried, the rest locked behind level 9 encryption, but one camera was still functional, a security feed on loop. I watched the footage in silence. It showed a chamber deep in the lower levels, one man strapped to a chair, beaten, starved, barely breathing, but it was him. Redden still alive, still fighting. The signal matched the one on Kurth's data chip. That's how we knew it was real. But the date stamp, that's what chilled me. 3 days ago he was alive now, somehow, in this dead place. Rain had survived. We moved fast, cut through sealed bulkheads, bypassed security overrides. The whole station felt like it was breathing behind the walls, humming, waiting. As we neared the lower level, we passed a nursery. Empty cribs, no records, no explanation. V stopped. What the hell were they Doing here, he muttered. I had a guess. But I didn't say it out loud. We finally reached the chamber, reinforced doors. Multiple layers of shielding. We hacked them all the moment the final seal dropped. The stench hit us. Decay, old sweat, something metallic and awful. Rien sat in the center of the room, strapped to a chair, thin, barely human anymore. He lifted his head slowly, one swollen eye opened, and he smiled. You took your time, he croaked. I dropped to my knees in front of him. Jesus reddened, he coughed a laugh. Didn't think I'd be seeing you again. You were always the quiet one. I didn't know what to say. Vec began scanning him for implants, traps, anything Council might have left behind. Rain kept talking slowly, like every word was being dragged through gravel. They used me not to break me, to study me. I looked up. Study. They wanted to know why humans resist, why we don't adapt like the others, why fear doesn't work on us, why pain doesn't reshape us. He turned his head toward the shadows in the corner. There are others. That's when I saw them, cages lined along the walls, some empty, some not. Not all were human, and not all were still alive. We freed him first. V pulled the feeding tubes from his arms and broke the restraints. Redden slumped, barely able to walk, but he was still conscious, still burning inside. As we moved to leave, he spoke again. They called it the cognition trial. Tried to reprogram our memories, make us forget who we were, kept asking the same question. I turned back. What question? He looked at me with that hollow stare. What makes a human choose death over submission? We got him back to the ship, barely. The moment we lifted off, the station began to shudder. Fail safes. The Council hadn't expected survivors. We broke orbit seconds before it imploded. No explosion, no fire, just a silent collapse like it had never existed. He's stable now, resting in the medbay. But he won't make it long. Whatever they did to him, it's killing him from the inside out. He gave us one final file before he passed out, encrypted, titled Extinction Protocol. I haven't opened it yet because part of me already knows they weren't just trying to wipe us out, they were preparing for something worse. And the humans, we were the experiment. Rain was asleep, hooked to every medical system we could rig into our ship. His breathing was ragged, monitors beeped in arrhythmic pulses. His skin was gray, his hands twitched in his sleep like he was still trying to fight something. Even in his dreams, he wasn't going to make it. We knew it, he knew it, but before he passed out, he told me one thing. One phrase that kept repeating in my head, like a blade stuck in bone. They weren't trying to kill us, they were trying to contain us. The words wouldn't leave me alone, not even hours later, when I sat alone in the comms chamber, staring at the blinking data cube he gave me. Extinction Protocol. The title alone felt like a dare or a curse. It took 12 separate encryption breaks to open the file. What I found inside didn't feel like a file at all. It felt like a confession. There were 3 sections. The first was a report signed by someone named High Executive Veron, a name I'd only seen whispered in deep black council files. Spook a shadow. The date on the file was 24 years ago, before the Federation formally absorbed Earth, before the war ended. The title, Humanity, Evolutionary Trajectory Risk Assessment. They knew from the beginning. They had studied our kind long before the first treaties were signed, not just our military history, Not just our politics, our biology, our neurology. They done tests, secretly, illegally, experiments on PSN. Volunteers, some were willing, most weren't. They discovered something. Something that terrified them. Humans didn't just resist control, we rewired ourselves in response to trauma. Where other species broke under stress, humans adapted faster than any known civilization in recorded galactic history. Our brains evolved under pressure, our hormones, our fight or flight responses, our entire neurological framework changed when exposed to conflict and high stress environments. Homo sapiens display an accelerated adaptive capacity, the file said, with neurochemical rewiring evident after prolonged exposure to violence, confinement, or grief. This is not regression, this is optimization. But that wasn't the worst part. The second section explained the real discovery. Subject species shows increased cognitive function post trauma. Emotional suppression is temporary. What follows is a restructured empathy model, colder but more efficient, less moral inhibition, elevated strategic awareness, higher tolerance for personal loss. They weren't scared of how we fought wars. They were scared of what we became when we lost them. The final section was a directive. If left unchecked, Homo sapiens will destabilize galactic balance within 3 standard generations. Recommend controlled population attrition, integration dilution, and memory correction protocols, execution of visible dissident advised, education suppression where applicable. They didn't want to destroy humanity. They wanted to suppress it, slow us down, keep us tame, because something in our DNA made us evolve through suffering, and they'd seen what we were capable of when backed into a corner. I sat there for hours trying to breathe, trying to process. All this time, we thought we were being exterminated, but they were doing something worse, domestication. I opened a secondary folder, shaking. Now, this one wasn't reports, it was footage, old footage from Earth from the First War. Black sites, prisons, labs. Human children separated from families. Dosed with drugs, conditioned. Softened. Hundreds of them. Some of the kids were talking to off-world researchers through translators. Others were locked in sensory isolation tanks. One boy kept repeating a phrase over and over, voice flat, like he wasn't even inside his body anymore. My name is forgot. My pain makes me better. Another clip. A woman screaming as doctors forced a neural crown over her skull, electricity spiking across her temples. Then her eyes changed, not dead, not broken. Cold, focused, clear. I closed the file. I couldn't watch anymore. V came in, quiet as always. He'd cleaned his gear, polished the barrel of his rifle like it was the only thing he could still control in a world spinning off its axis. He glanced at me, then at the cube. You opened it, yeah. He nodded slowly. And they weren't killing us to keep us down. They were doing it to slow down what we were becoming. He didn't look surprised. He just sat. I saw it in the prison camps. Some humans just cracked, but others, they changed. They learned, got stronger, stopped needing things normal people needed. I saw a guy chew off his own arm to slip out of restraints, didn't flinch, walked 30 km. After I looked at him, how do you live with something like that? He shrugged. You don't, you just make sure the next guy survives a little longer. We got the message from Horn 3 hours later. The council had declared open war. not just on rebels, on every independent human colony in the outer systems. They were calling it a galactic containment initiative, spinning it as a defensive measure. We must act now to preserve galactic peace. The Council broadcast, the human threat is no longer theoretical. They weren't even hiding it anymore, so we made a choice. The embers went dark, not disbanded, not destroyed, hidden. We sent the extinction protocol to every neutral species embassy, every black market network, every underground reporter still breathing. We didn't ask for help, we gave them a choice. Keep standing by or help us stop what the Council started. And then we prepared. Rain woke up once more before the med. Riggs failed, he was dying. His eyes were glassy, but his voice still had weight. Like even death was afraid to get too close. You read the file, he rasped. I nodded. He exhaled slowly. It's true, I saw it in myself. After they tortured me, I should have been broken. I should have begged for death, but instead I started thinking clearer. Memories got sharper. Pain didn't register the same way anymore. I wanted to tell him he was strong, but he stopped me. This isn't about strength. This is about what they made us into. The Federation didn't just build prisons, they built pressure chambers trying to force us back into submission. But they didn't realize we don't regress. He coughed, then smiled faintly. We evolve. That was the last thing he said. Reed and died 32 minutes later. Heart failure, internal bleeding, organ decay. From neural overwriting, I buried him. The black soil of Vex's home world. Moon covered in ash and silence. No ceremony, just a whisper of earth falling over the only man who tried to warn us before it was too late. Now we move in shadow. The embers are more than cells now. We are generations of trauma made real. They tried to erase us with comfort, then they tried to erase us with fear. Now they'll try with fire. But they forgot one thing. Every time they kill one of us, they make the rest of us harder to kill. We called it Ashfall, a name whispered only. Encrypted channels, a final operation. No one dared to speak aloud unless they were ready to die. The plan was simple. Hit the Council's central core. Not the surface fortresses, not the outer war fleets, but the nerve center deep inside. The orbital citadel of Kadros Prime, the capital, the heart of the Federation, where the Council held its meetings, where laws were passed, where entire species were labeled acceptable or dangerous based on a vote no human was allowed to cast. The last time a rebellion got within 10 systems of Kadros, it was wiped out in under 48 hours. We had no illusions. Most of us weren't coming back, but that wasn't the point. This wasn't about victory anymore. This was about truth, about forcing them and the galaxy to see us one last time. Not as servant, not as threats, as a species that refused to die quietly. The embers had changed. We weren't the same scattered cells anymore. We were a machine rebuilt, rearmed, and led by survivors who had lost everything. After Rain's death, something shifted in us. The rage got colder, sharper. We stopped waiting for the Council to make the next move. We made it for them. Sabotage, assassinations, data leaks. Half the galactic sectors were still processing the extinction protocol while we were already flying toward Kadros. The final fleet was 33 ships strong, half repurposed freighters. The rest were warships from species who had quietly chosen our side. The Endari sent a Stealth cruiser, the Ventri gave us. Jamming satellites, even rogue elements. From the Alari caste systems slipped us. Weapon tech banned in 6 sectors, they didn't call it support, they called it balance. They knew what the council had done and they didn't want to be next. We launched on the Day of Unity, the same annual event where the council celebrated its centuries of peace. We timed it perfectly, half their defense grid was powering the broadcast beacons. The other half was focused on the protest riots breaking out across 6 sectors. I stood on the bridge of the lead ship Vera's Flame, named after Riina because she deserved to fly one last time. Vex stood behind me, gear-locked eyes dead set on the targeting readouts. You ready? I asked him. He didn't answer, he just nodded once. It was enough. The approach was clean. The first wave hit like lightning. Cloaked dropships slipping under their orbital shields and blasting holes through the outer ring. By the time the Council's AI responded, we were already inside. No retreat, no surrender. We poured into Cadros like fire through crack in glass. The station was a floating city, clean, gold-trimmed, polished like a monument to the lie they'd forced on the galaxy. Architecture was too perfect, the walkways too white. It was built to make people feel small. We tore through it room by room. Vex's rifle barked in precise bursts, dropping enforcers in black armor. H covered the rear flank with heavy plasma charges, blowing every choke point to deny reinforcements. I led the forward team. We weren't just killing soldiers, we were destroying symbols. We reached the inner citadel in 17 minutes. The council's chambers, massive vatted ceilings, tiered thrones, holographic banners projected above each seat, each one representing a species that had sold its soul for stability. Only 5 of the 12 seats were occupied. Cowards the rest, they'd fled before we even breached orbit. The ones who stayed either too proud or too sure they could talk their way out. I stepped into the chamber, rifle lowered but not holstered. The central speaker, a long-necked Truvian with eyes like wet marbles, raised a hand. We were told this was a terrorist attack. It hissed, "You are here to kill us." I looked around at the marble floors, the diamond-carved archways, the chamber where they'd voted on the forced sterilization of our children, and I said, "No, we're here to finish what you started." The firefight erupted without warning. One of the guards panicked, opened fire. Took down 2 of ours before V dropped him with a headshot. Chaos. One of the council members triggered silent distress beacon. I saw it too late, and seconds later the Citadel's AI core activated lockdown. Doors slammed shut. Defense grids came online. We were trapped inside the heart of the enemy. Perfect. They thought we'd brought weapons. We had, but not the kind they expected. The true weapon was in my coat. A drive containing the full, unredacted extinction protocol wrapped in a virus that would override every government channel once uploaded. And now we were at the source. Our slicer, a kid named Ren, barely 20, born in the ruins of Mars Base Delta, plugged in the drive at the heart of the council chamber. The AI fought back, but Redden's code still worked. It wasn't just a data drop, it was a purge across the galaxy. The truth bled onto every screen: hospitals, homes, schools, the protocol, the experiments, the lies, the sterilization programs, the staged riots, the fake trials, the execution of Innocence disguised as justice, reddens. Final message played on every frequency. They thought they could program us to forget who we were. They thought fear would overwrite memory, but they forgot something. Pain doesn't weaken humans, it hones us. And now we remember everything. Reaction was instant. Riots turned to uprisings. Civilian protests turned into military defections. Alien soldiers threw down their weapons. Entire systems began voting to leave the council, not in years or months but in hours. The Federation wasn't collapsing, it was detonating. The chamber was on fire. Smoke filled the air. One of the counselors lay dying, gurgling on the steps of her own throne. The Truvian crawled toward me, hand raised in surrender. I aimed my weapon and paused. He stared at me, terrified. You win. He gasped. You've destroyed order. You've killed peace. No, I said. You did, and I pulled the trigger. The aftermath wasn't clean. Revolutions never are. We lost H 2 days later in a mop-up operation. A sniper caught him. The neck. V was wounded. Shrapnel in the spine. How didn't scream, just told me to finish the job. Ren vanished. No one knows where he went. Maybe he just wanted to live for once. The council was gone, disbanded, dismantled, their systems in ruin, their wealth seized, their secrets public. But we didn't claim power. We didn't build a new throne. We left it empty because power wasn't the goal. Truth was, and we gave the galaxy that whether it wanted it or not. Now I live in silence. I don't give speeches. I don't write books. I don't lead. I just exist quietly among my people, free. They still speak Rain's name like a ghost. Some call him the flame that burned away the rot. Others call him the one who taught us to never kneel again. But I just remember the way he smiled in that cell, bloody and dying, and still managed to say, we evolve. He was right. We did, but not into something darker, into something unbroken. The galaxy fears us still. They look at humanity now and see species that won't be caged, won't be muted, won't be rewritten. And maybe that's what we are. Maybe we'll always be the dangerous ones, the unpredictable ones, the fire that never dies. But after everything, we earned that title, not by surviving but by refusing to forget who we